Hello everybody and welcome to another review of Drones Visual. Today I bring you a review of a drone that has many people curious because of its inviting price. Yes, I'm talking about the UpAir drone that has recently hit the market. This drone comes fully equipped for FPV flying, and then of course it features a GPS which allows it to use functions such as position hold, return home, etc. I tend to divide these kind of reviews in a few parts, otherwise it'll be too long and boring to some of you and too time consuming to make. In this first part we will take a look at what we get and some of the main features of the UpAir, and then in future reviews we'll go out to fly and check the video quality and so on. I want to let you know that I was one of the lucky persons that got a backpack included with the UpAir drone, but I was told that only a limited number of UpAir drones will come with this backpack, so don't be surprised if you don't get one. For those of you that would like to use the backpacks, such as the one provided with the Cheerson or Phantom drones, chances are that the UpAir drone won't fit in those because of its landing gear, which is kinda rather wide. Well, having said this, we can go ahead and proceed to take a look at what we get in the box with the UpAir drone. The first thing we see in the box is the battery charger. This charger comes with a special plug that connects directly into the rear part of the battery that I will show you later. And here you can take a closer look at the connector. The next thing we see is the balance charger to charge the LiPo battery that comes with the transmitter, and it not only powers the transmitter but it also powers the FPV monitor. This is the cable to power the balance charger that I showed you before, and these are the props with silver and black nuts. The UpAir drone comes with a transmitter that, as you can see, has an FPV screen attached to it. And then of course here we have the UpAir drone itself. The UpAir drone weighs around 1,350 grams, from which 360 grams are from the battery, then the gimbal and the camera are around 260 grams. These drones will support functions such as GPS position hold, easy flying mode, which is basically the so-called headless mode, and return home. Then it also comes with an FPV system. According to the manufacturer, the range of the signal for both the 2.4 GHz signal to control the drone and the video signal is of about 1 kilometer, and it should be able to fly for about 90 minutes with a full battery. Next, we can take a look at the motors. These over here are the motors of the UpAir drones. Two of the motors have a tiny hole in the shaft to help us understand where we should place the props. So the props with the black nuts should be placed on the shafts with the tiny holes. This could be useful for those of you that might feel confused about how to place the props correctly. So far I do not have the kV values for these motors. Right behind the motors you can see the ventilation openings to cool down the electronic speed controllers. Then under we can see there are 4 screws that actually hold the motors in place, and you can see them over here. Then right after that we have the protection cover for the LEDs, which is secured with a tiny screw that you can see at the end of it. Then right behind these LEDs we can see again ventilation openings, probably to cool down the electronic speed controllers that should be located around that area. Here you can then see the landing gear, which seems that just came out of a concentration camp. The plastic used for the landing gear seems very rigid and brittle, even more than the one from the Cheerson CX22. So make sure you land smoothly and preferably on grass, because chances are that this landing gear will crack if it hits the ground with a little bit of momentum. The only advantage I see to having a landing gear like this is that it's very light, but it still feels too brittle. Luckily the landing gear can be easily replaced, but still I think it's a little bit of an Achilles heel for this quad, and I think many people might want to go and replace it. As you can see, replace it is rather easy because there are only 2 screws that you need to remove here in order to take one of the legs away. And then we have of course a hole for the antenna. Here you can see one of the antennas from the receiver coming from the inside of the drone. The antennas are attached by a sticky pad that can be easily removed using either your fingers or any other tool. They seem to be firmly placed within the landing gear, so I think there is no risk for them to become loose during flight or anything like that. Even now I'm having a little bit of a hard time actually getting it out. This red wire here exits the body of the quad and then attaches to what seems to be an FPV antenna, which is attached to the landing gear and is being held by two tiny screws. Here you can take a closer look at it. There is a connector plugged into the unit, as I was saying before, and the unit is being held by these two tiny screws here at either side. Here we can take a closer look at the connector that inserts into this antenna. If we reverse the drone and take a look at the bottom of the drone, we'll be able to see the ventilation openings. Some are located on the arms that we saw before, and another one is located here at the center, possibly to cool down the circuit board inside the drone. This seems to be to change the transmitting frequency of the video signal, and it is not attached directly to the gimbal. I mean, it does not form part of the gimbal itself. It has a set of wires that go inside the body of the drone through an opening right on top of the gimbal. According to the manual, you can select between 10 channels. The upper drone comes with a 2-axis gimbal. The base of the gimbal is attached with 4 screws, and then the arm that holds the motors is attached with 2 tiny screws. The upper plate of the base of the gimbal, here that you can see, has these 2 little openings for the screws that basically hold the arm that holds the brushless motors, and then the dampening rubber balls to prevent vibration. They're made of a thick rubber, and I think they do a pretty good job keeping the gimbal from vibrating. And then here are the brushless motors that seem to be protected by a sort of a plastic housing. The rear part of the gimbal has a plastic frame that holds the camera. This frame has 3 openings. Initially, I thought that there was a part missing. Actually, I looked all over to find nothing, but I was later informed that the later versions of this drone will include a clip to secure the camera to the frame of the gimbal. So don't go crazy looking for that clip. I think even without the clip, there's little risk for the camera sliding out of the frame unless you crash the drone. I noticed also while examining the gimbal closely that many of the parts of the gimbal are made of a kind of thick and resistant plastic. Judging by the way the plastic was cut and its texture, I assume that most of the parts of the gimbal were actually 3D printed. The frame holding the camera, you see, it has like an opening below to insert the memory card. And as I mentioned before, most of the parts of the gimbal seem to have this sort of 3D printed look. You will notice many rough edges and many parts that need to be polished better. I have no problem with this at all, but I would advise UpAir to try to work on those rough edges and try to improve a little bit the final finish of the gimbal so it looks basically more appealing. I will zoom now a little bit to show you what I mean by rough edges. Not sure if you can see that properly now here, the way this plastic is cut. Now this is a side view of the base of the gimbal, and you can see the wires that go from the control unit to the interior of the body of the drone here. Not sure if you can see well, but I hope you can. Now the camera can be taken out of the plastic frame by firmly sliding it sideways. You can see that the camera is connected to the gimbal via USB. There is a USB plug on the camera right on top of the HDMI output. Also, the gimbal has on the inner part of the frame a USB connector where the camera attaches to. Let me zoom in a little bit here so you can see it better. This is the USB connector in the gimbal, and it seems made of plastic. The camera included with the drone is a rebranded Firefly camera, and it will come in 2 versions, either 2K or 4K capable. Now I have tried some of the Firefly cameras before, and they tend to deliver a pretty good video quality, and some of them have the so-called gyro function to stabilize the video. On the rear part of the drone we can see the battery. This is what they call a smart battery, and it comes with a power button and a set of LEDs that inform you about the charge of the battery. Pressing the power button once will tell us the charge of the battery. When the LED lights, all the LEDs are basically on, it means 100%, then 4 LEDs means 75%, 3 LEDs 50%, and so on. Pressing the power button twice while holding it during the second press will power on the quad. To slide the battery out, firmly press the plastic clips on both ends of the battery and pull the battery out while holding the drone, and it comes out pretty easily. Here on the top you can see the two connectors where the battery plugs. The one on the left is the negative and the one on the right is the positive. Then inside you can see the circuit board. If we take a better look inside, we can see the wires from the gimbal entering the body of the drone and moving up to connect to the circuit board. And I will show you now in the moment the connector. Here is the connector on the circuit board where the wires are plugged. I'm not sure if you notice that the connector is actually slightly shifted towards the left. I guess this is due to the shape of the body of the quad. I think that connector should have been placed a few millimeters to the left instead, but well, I don't think it's a major thing. And here you can see some dampening rubbers that have probably the flight controller mounted on them on the other side of the circuit board. The battery that comes with the OPER drone, as you can see here, has a capacity of 5,400 milliamps and a discharge rate of 10C, a voltage of 11.1 volts and a 59.94 watt-hour rating. The positive and negative connectors are labeled on the plastic. Don't confuse them while charging the battery unless you want to see fireworks. The positive is on the left side and the negative is on the right side, as you can see here. I think it could be a bit hard to remove the plastic cover of the battery as I don't see any screws, but I don't think you need to do this. The manufacturer recommends to replace the battery after 300 charge cycles, and you should keep the battery capacity below 50% if you're planning to store it for long periods of time. Now let's cover the main features of the transmitter of the OPER drone. First we have the transmitter that you can see here, and then if we take a look at the sticks, they're both spring loaded and they feel actually pretty nice. This transmitter is mode 2, so basically you have the throttle on the left side. You might have noticed that the central area of the transmitter is lacking any buttons. The reason is that the power button or power switch has been replaced and it's on the rear of the transmitter now. Here you can see the power switch, and let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. The first position to the left allows you to turn on the transmitter without turning on the FPV screen. The center position turns off the transmitter, and then the last position to the right turns on the transmitter along with the FPV screen. Right under the power switch we have the compartment for the battery. Sliding down the cover allows us to access the 3S battery that powers both the transmitter and the FPV screen. The capacity of this battery is 2,700 milliamps and the voltage 11.1 volts. You are supposed to use the battery, the balance charger provided to charge this battery, but you can also use your own balance charger for better results. To the right side of the battery compartment you can find a rubber cover that covers a frequency selector for the video signal. To access it you can lift the rubber either using your finger or a little screwdriver, and then once the rubber cover is lifted you will be able to see the frequency selector right beneath. At both sides end of the transmitter you'll find ventilation openings to cool down the internal components of the transmitter. Attached to the transmitter we can find a very thin 7 inches FPV screen, which will allow you to fly the OPER drone FPV style. I do not currently have information about the actual resolution of the screen, but I will let you know later if I find out. As you can see, the screen is super thin due to the fact that the FPV receiver is actually located inside the transmitter itself instead of being attached to the screen as we can see in other monitors. Then on the rear of the screen we will find a power and signal cable attached to the screen. It is not possible to detach this cable from the screen. There are some screws then to the right side of the screen that might help secure the rear cover or secure some internal components. We can see that the screen holder that seems to be made of aluminum is actually secured by 4 screws that you can see around here. The screen is attached to a controller via USB plug, so if the screen suffers some damage, it should not be difficult to replace it. We will just need to unplug the USB connector and then unscrew the screen holder from the transmitter, and it will be ready to be changed. Let's now cover the switches. On the right side we have a 3-position switch. The lowest position is the so-called easy flying or headless mode, which is, basically it's kind of like a headless mode. Then the center position is a GPS hold or position hold, in which the quad will basically lock its current position, and then pulling the switch all the way up will activate the altitude hold mode. If we look to the right, we will see a scrolling wheel to control the pitch of the gimbal. It is a pity though that we can't make any adjustment to the rate at which the gimbal tilts the camera. Moving the wheel to the right will cause the camera to point down, and scrolling the wheel to the left will cause the camera to point up. If we move then to the left side, we will see the switch that controls the return home mode. This is a 2-position switch, so in the upper position, return home mode is off, while in the lowest position the return home mode is activated and the drone returns basically back. To the left we can see basically the video and photo buttons. Pressing either will activate video or photo mode. On the top of the transmitter we find a couple of antennas. One of the antennas is for the 2.4 GHz signal that controls the drone, and the other antenna receives the 5.8 GHz signal, a video signal that the transmitter of the drone sends. Something I didn't like about these antennas is that they were a little bit too loose. They seem to be shaking from one place to another, and like they were about to fall off, but I think, well, it might not be a big deal. Something really nice about the screen on the transmitter is that it's really easy to fold them together, and this makes transportation really easy. There is a space dedicated to the transmitter inside the backpack that comes with this drone, and it's actually not very big, precisely due to the fact that you can fold them into such a compact shape. The included props are 9 inches, and if I were you, I would actually replace these props for some quality ones, because the finish in these props is not very good. You can see little pieces of plastic here and there. I was going to check how the balance was, but I have no idea what my props balancer is right now, so we'll have to do. Okay, this concludes the first part of my review. In the second part I will take the OTIMO drone for a flight, and we will take a look at the flying modes, FPV transmission, quality of the footage, and so on. So stay tuned for the next video. Please, if you find my review useful, please give me thumbs up, and I will also appreciate any feedback as it helps me improve. If you're interested in the topic of drones and would like to stay updated about the latest news directly from China, subscribe to my channel. Hope to see you on my next video.